Ambassador Zethkar of the Galactic Council stood before the massive view screen in his flagship, watching Earth's blue marbles spin peacefully in the void. His four arms crossed in satisfaction as the final human diplomatic vessel approached their fleet. After 3 years of negotiations, humanity would finally surrender. Foolish mammals, he clicked to his aide. They actually believed their pathetic appeals for peace would work. The human ship was small compared to the Council's dreadnoughts. Earth had no military fleet to speak of, no weapons that could pierce Council shields, no technology that posed any threat. They were a young species, barely 2 centuries into space travel, while the Council had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Captain Sarachin's voice crackled through the communication array. Ambassador Zethkar, we brought the signed surrender documents as requested. Our planet is ready to comply with Council regulations. Zitkar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Humans had discovered faster-than-light travel only recently, stumbling into Council space like children wandering into a den of predators. Their first contact had been peaceful enough. Humans were naturally curious, diplomatic, even friendly. But they had one fatal flaw. They occupied 17 worlds rich in quantum crystals, the most valuable resource in the galaxy. The Council had been patient at first. They offered humanity junior membership, promising protection in exchange for mining rights. When humans politely declined, explaining they needed those resources for their growing population, the Council had been understanding. They increased their offer, then increased it again. But humans were surprisingly stubborn. They spoke of sovereignty, of self-determination, of the right to control their own destiny. Such naive concepts. The Council had crushed 1,000 species who thought the same way. The economic blockade began 6 months ago. No human ship could enter Council space. No trade agreements. No technology transfers. Earth's outer colonies began to starve as supply lines were cut. Still, humanity refused to surrender their mining rights. Captain Chun, Zethkar purred into the communicator. I trust your people understand the terms? Total surrender of all quantum crystal deposits, immediate Council oversight of all 17 human worlds, and integration into our economic system as a client species. There was a long pause before Chen responded. We understand the terms, Ambassador. But I need to ask you something first. Make it quick, human. My patience grows thin. In all your dealings with Earth, in all our negotiations, did we ever once threaten you? Did we ever attack your ships or your people? Did we ever do anything except try to find a peaceful solution? Zethkar's confusion was genuine. What relevance do these questions have? You are defeated. Your surrender is a formality. Please, just answer. Did humanity ever act with aggression toward the Council? The ambassador reviewed his memories. No, the humans had never attacked. They had been irritatingly polite throughout the entire conflict. Even when their colonies were dying, they had continued to seek diplomatic solutions, offering compromises and alternative arrangements. It had actually made the conquest more tedious than usual. No, he admitted, your species has shown remarkable restraint. Almost cowardly, one might say. Another pause. When Shin spoke again, her voice carried a strange quality Zethkar couldn't identify. Ambassador, you should know that Earth's government fell 3 days ago. The people voted out every official who supported peaceful resistance. They elected someone new. Irrelevant Zitkar snipped. The surrender stands regardless of your internal politics. The new government asked me to deliver a message along with these surrender documents. Would you like to hear it? If you must. Chen's voice grew steady, almost ceremonial. Message begins to the Galactic Council and all member species. For 3 years, Earth sought peace. We offered friendship, trade partnerships, and compromise. We respected your laws, honored your customs, and tried to find a solution that would benefit everyone. We believed that civilized beings could resolve their differences through dialogue and mutual respect. Zethkar rolled his eyes. More human sentiment. We were wrong, Chen continued. You have taught us that the universe does not reward peace with peace. You have shown us that kindness is seen as weakness, that diplomacy is taken for naivety. You have forced us to learn a lesson we never wanted to learn. The ambassador felt the first stirring of unease. Something in the human's tone had changed. Therefore, Earth's new government formally withdraws all offers of surrender. We reject Council authority over human space. And we declare that any Council vessel found in human territory after this moment will be considered an act of war. Zethkar laughed, a harsh chittering sound. You have no military, human. Your entire species couldn't defeat a single Council destroyer. You're absolutely right, Ambassador. We tried peace. Now you'll witness our retribution. The communication cut off. Seconds later, proximity alarms began screaming throughout the Council fleet. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez had spent 40 years in Earth's merchant marine before the blockade changed everything. Now he stood on the bridge of humanity's first warship, watching sensor readings that defied everything the galaxy thought they knew about human capabilities. Sir, quantum signatures are stabilizing, reported Lieutenant Kim from the weapons console. Project Lazarus is online and ready. Rodriguez nodded grimly. 3 days ago, he had been running supply missions to Mars. Today, he commanded Earth's last hope. The transition felt surreal, but then again, everything about the last 6 months had been surreal. When the Council's blockade began starving human colonies, Earth's greatest minds had gathered in secret. Not politicians or diplomats this time, but engineers and scientists. People who solved problems instead of talking about them. They had asked themselves a simple question: what could humanity do that no other species had ever tried? The answer came from Dr. Elena Vasquez, a physicist who specialized in quantum mechanics. Every species in the galaxy follows the same technological path, she had explained to the Emergency Council. They develop faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, and defensive shields using quantum crystal technology. But what if we don't play by their rules? Rodriguez remembered that meeting. The desperation in every face, the weight of 17 worlds depending on their decision. Dr. Vasquez had presented her calculations with the calm precision of someone describing the weather, even though she was essentially proposing humanity commit species-wide suicide. The Council shields work by deflecting quantum-based attacks, she had continued. Their hulls are designed to absorb energy weapons. Their tactics assume their enemies will fight using the same technology they do. But quantum crystals aren't the only way to generate power or create weapons. Project Lazarus had taken 6 months to complete. 6 months of humanity's brightest minds working in absolute secrecy while their people slowly starved. They had torn apart Earth's industrial capacity, converting civilian manufacturing to military production. Every human colony had contributed, sending resources through hidden smuggling routes that bypassed the Council blockade. The result floated in space before them now. 50 ships that looked nothing like traditional spacecraft. No elegant curves or crystalline structures like Council vessels. These were brutal, angular things built from asteroid miners and cargo haulers, bristling with weapons that had never been seen in galactic warfare. Target analysis complete, Kim reported. Council fleet consists of 12 dreadnoughts, 47 destroyers, and approximately 200 support vessels. Total mass displacement, 18 million tons. Rodriguez smiled without humor. The Council had brought enough firepower to glass a dozen planets. Against any conventional enemy, it would have been overkill. But humanity had stopped being conventional the moment they decided peace was impossible. All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you mistake human patience for human weakness. Activate Project Lazarus. Across the human fleet, ancient engines roared to life. Not quantum drives or antimatter reactors, but fusion rockets pushed beyond their safety limits. Nuclear engines that burned like tiny stars, accelerating the human ships at impossible speeds. The Council had forgotten that before humanity reached the stars, they had mastered splitting atoms. Ambassador Zethkar's voice cut through the communication channels, panic replacing his earlier arrogance. Were those energy signatures? Those aren't quantum drives. No, Rodriguez replied calmly. They're not. The human fleet accelerated past the point where any rational crew would have been crushed by G-forces. But human ships had been equipped with something else the galaxy had never seen. Gravity dampeners powered by controlled nuclear fusion. Technology so primitive by galactic standards that no species had considered its military applications in centuries. Council sensors couldn't track the human ships properly. Their targeting computers had been programmed to recognize quantum signatures and energy patterns. The human fleet barely registered as artificial constructs, appearing more like asteroids with unusual velocity vectors. Impossible, Zethkar whispered. Your acceleration curves are beyond biological tolerance. Your crew should be dead. Ambassador, let me explain something about humans, Rodriguez said as his fleet closed the distance. We're the species that strapped ourselves to controlled explosions to reach orbit. We built machines that could destroy our entire planet before we figured out how to leave it. Do you really think a little acceleration scares us? The first Council destroyer opened fire, quantum beams lancing toward the human ships. The energy weapons struck armored hulls and simply dispersed, unable to find purchase against surfaces that didn't respond to quantum manipulation. Humanity had covered their ships in depleted uranium and titanium steel, materials so basic that Council weapons couldn't properly interact with them. Nuclear dampeners activated, Kim reported, beginning close-range engagement. The human ships didn't slow down. Instead, they accelerated harder, their fusion drives creating brilliant stars in the darkness. Rodriguez felt his ship shudder as they entered weapon range, but they weren't firing energy weapons or launching quantum missiles. They were firing projectiles. Solid chunks of tungsten accelerated to significant fractions of light speed by magnetic rails powered by fusion reactors. Kinetic weapons so primitive that most galactic species had abandoned them millennia ago, considering them crude and ineffective. The first tungsten rod struck a Council destroyer amidships. Without shields that could deflect solid matter, the alien vessel simply disintegrated. Ancient armor plating, designed to absorb energy, crumpled like paper against pure kinetic force. Sir, Council fleet is attempting to retreat, Kim reported with barely contained excitement. Let them run, Rodriguez ordered. But make sure they understand one thing first. He opened a channel to the entire Council fleet. Ambassador Zethkar, this is humanity's final message before you flee. Tell your government that Earth tried peace. We offered friendship, compromise, and coexistence. You chose war instead. Now you've seen what human war actually looks like. The human fleet continued its relentless advance, fusion drives burning like the wrath of a young star. Behind them, Earth's orbital shipyards were already constructing the next wave of vessels, each one deadlier than the last. Council High Command buzzed with activity as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Vorthicay, Supreme Military Commander of the Galactic Council, studied the tactical displays with growing disbelief. In 3 weeks, humanity had done the impossible. 17 Council fleets destroyed, his intelligence officer reported. 23 major installations captured or eliminated. Human forces have penetrated 8 sectors into Council space. Vorthicay's tentacles writhed in agitation. How is this possible? They're a primitive species with no military tradition. Their technology is centuries behind ours. The holographic display showed the advance of human forces across the galaxy. Each red marker represented a Council defeat, and there were far too many red markers. What made it worse was the pattern. Humans weren't just winning battles. They were learning from each engagement, adapting their tactics with frightening speed. Sir, we have a survivor from the Kepler Station attack, the intelligence officer continued. Commander Zilfin wants to brief you personally. The survivor entered the command chamber, his usually pristine uniform torn and scorched. Commander Zilfin had commanded one of the Council's most fortified positions, a space station that should have held against any conceivable assault. Instead, it had fallen in less than 6 hours. Tell me what happened, Vorthicay demanded. Zilfin's breathing apparatus wheezed as he recalled the horror. They didn't attack the station directly, sir. Instead, this in a single ship looked like a modified cargo vessel. It approached under flag of truce, requesting to deliver humanitarian supplies to our wounded. You allowed them to dock? Our protocols require acceptance of humanitarian assistance. The ship contained medical supplies, food, even entertainment materials for our crew. The human delegation was completely peaceful. They helped our doctors treat the wounded, share their supplies freely, and asked for nothing in return. Vorthicay felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard similar reports from other survivors. Continue. They stayed for 12 hours. During that time, they were extraordinarily helpful. They repaired some of our equipment that had been damaged in previous battles, even upgraded our life support systems. When they left, they thanked us for our hospitality and wished us well in the conflict. Then what happened? Zilfin's eyes showed the thousand-yard stare of someone who had witnessed the impossible. 6 hours after they departed, our entire computer network began shutting down. Not attacked, not hacked, shut down. Every system, every backup, every isolated network. The humans had somehow introduced a virus into our technology while they were helping us. The fleet admiral felt his blood run cold. A computer virus? But our systems are quantum encrypted, biolocked, and isolated from external networks. No species has ever successfully penetrated Council cybersecurity. That's what we thought too, sir. But humans don't use quantum computing. They use something called digital binary systems that our security protocols don't even recognize as real computers. Their virus was written in machine code, so primitive that our cybersecurity systems ignored it completely. Vorthake stared at the tactical display, understanding beginning to dawn. They infected your systems during their humanitarian visit. Worse than that, sir. The virus didn't just shut down our systems. It transmitted everything back to human command. Ship movements, tactical plans, weapon specifications, shield frequencies, everything. When they finally attacked, they knew exactly where to hit us and exactly how to do it. Another officer burst into the command chamber. Sir, urgent report from the Antares sector. Admiral Vorthake, you need to see this. The holographic display shifted to show a council fleet in full retreat. Vorthake watched in disbelief as human ships pursued them, but something was wrong with the tactical picture. Magnify Section 7, he ordered. The display zoomed in, revealing the horrifying truth. The human ships weren't just chasing the Council fleet. They were hurting them. Like predators driving prey toward a trap, the humans had positioned their forces to push the Council ships into a specific region of space. What's in that sector? Vorthake demanded. Asteroid belt, sir. Nothing of strategic importance. Then, why are they dash? The fleet admiral's words died as the display updated. The asteroids were moving, not drifting naturally, but accelerating with purpose. Each rock had been fitted with fusion drives, turning them into massive kinetic weapons. They militarized an entire asteroid field, Vorthake whispered. How long would that have taken? His tactical officer ran quick calculations. Based on the number of asteroids and the modifications required, at least 6 months, sir. They would have had to start this project before the blockade even began. The implication hit everyone in the command center simultaneously. Humanity hadn't just responded to Council aggression. They had anticipated it. While their diplomats negotiated for peace, their engineers had been preparing for war. Sir, incoming priority transmission from the human fleet, the communications officer announced. Put it through. The display shifted to show a human woman in military uniform. Her rank insignia read Admiral, and her expression was calm, professional, almost friendly. Greetings, Council High Command. I am Admiral Sarek Chun, formerly captain of a diplomatic vessel, currently commanding the human Third Fleet. I have a message from Earth's government. Vorthake found his voice. Admiral Chun, the Council is prepared to discuss terms dash. No. Chun interrupted politely. You misunderstand. This isn't a negotiation. This is a notification. She gestured, and the display filled with tactical data. Star charts, fleet movements, resource allocations, a complete strategic picture of human military operations. As you can see, human forces are currently engaged in operations across 17 sectors. We have eliminated Council military presence in 43 systems and captured strategic resources in 89 locations. This isn't a war, Admiral Vorthake. This is pest control. The Council Fleet Admiral felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Genuine fear. What do you want? Admiral Chen's smile was perfectly pleasant. The same thing we wanted 6 months ago. To be left alone. The difference is that now we're going to enforce that desire rather than simply requesting it. The transmission ended, leaving Council High Command in stunned silence. On the tactical display, red markers continued to multiply as human forces advanced deeper into galactic space, each victory more decisive than the last. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in Earth's newly constructed Strategic Command Center, watching holographic displays that showed the impossible becoming routine. Around her, hundreds of specialists coordinated humanity's first galactic war with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. But Elena knew the truth that others were only beginning to understand. This wasn't just about military victory. Phase 3 is complete, reported General Harrison from the tactical station. All Council military installations in the Outer Rim have been neutralized. Human forces now control the Kepler trade routes. Elena nodded absently, her attention focused on a different set of displays. While everyone else tracked ships and battles, she monitored something far more significant: the economic collapse of the Galactic Council. The quantum crystal trade that had powered galactic civilization for millennia was grinding to a halt. Dr. Vasquez, incoming data from the Intelligence Division, her assistant announced. The Zephyrian Collective is requesting a meeting with Earth's government. Elena raised an eyebrow. The Zephyrians were one of the Council's oldest member species, their economy entirely dependent on quantum crystal processing. If they were reaching out to Earth independently, it meant the political structure of the galaxy was fracturing. Schedule the meeting, she said. But first, let me show you something that will change how we approach these negotiations. Elena activated a new holographic display, one that had been classified until this moment. The image showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, but instead of stars and planets, it displayed economic data. Trade routes, resource flows, manufacturing centers, and dependency networks created a complex web that connected every inhabited system. This is what I've been working on while our fleets fought the Council, Elena explained to the assembled command staff. We always assumed our war was about military victory, but I realized something crucial. The Council never built an empire through conquest alone. They built it through economic control. General Harrison frowned. What do you mean, Doctor? Elena manipulated the display, highlighting specific trade routes. Every species in the galaxy depends on quantum crystals for their technology. The Council controlled the largest deposits and the most efficient processing methods. They didn't need to conquer other species militarily. They simply made them economically dependent. The display shifted to show resource flows over time. Watch what happens when we disrupt their quantum crystal shipments. The holographic galaxy began to change. As human forces captured Council installations, the flow of quantum crystals slowed. But instead of simply stopping, the resources began flowing along different routes that led to human-controlled space. We're not just destroying their military, Elena continued. We're replacing their economic model. Admiral Rodriguez's voice crackled through the communication system from his flagship. Doctor, you need to see this. The Arcticean Federation just announced they're withdrawing from the Council. They want to establish direct trade relations with Earth. Elena smiled. That's the fourth major species this week. And it's happening exactly as predicted. She brought up another display showing Earth's rapid industrial expansion. In 6 months, humanity had gone from a minor player in galactic politics to the fastest-growing economic power in the galaxy. But they hadn't achieved this through traditional means. While other species focused on perfecting quantum crystal technology, we developed alternatives, Elena explained. Our fusion power systems, our kinetic weapons, our digital computing, all of it represents technology that doesn't require quantum crystals. The implications were staggering. For millennia, galactic civilization had been built on the assumption that quantum crystals were essential for advanced technology. Humanity had just proven that assumption wrong. Sir, priority message from the Galactic Council, announced the communications officer. Council Prime Minister Zarathal is requesting immediate cessation of hostilities and formal peace negotiations. Elena exchanged glances with General Harrison. After 6 months of telling us surrender was our only option, now they want to negotiate? Patch it through, Harrison ordered. The holographic display shifted to show the Council's highest leader, a being whose species had ruled the galactic government for over 2,000 years. Zarathal looked older than Elena remembered from previous diplomatic broadcasts, his ceremonial robes somehow less impressive against the backdrop of political collapse. People of Earth, Zarathal began, his translator converting his alien speech into formal diplomatic language. The Galactic Council acknowledges that our previous approach to human relations may have been overzealous. We are prepared to discuss a new framework for coexistence. General Harrison leaned forward. What kind of framework, Prime Minister? Full recognition of human sovereignty over your 17 worlds. Immediate lifting of all trade restrictions. Most favored trading status within Council space. And a formal apology for any hardships our policies may have caused your people. Elena almost laughed. 6 months ago, such an offer would have been beyond humanity's wildest dreams. Now it seemed pathetically inadequate. Prime Minister, Elena said, stepping into view of the transmission, I'm afraid you misunderstand our current position. Earth is no longer interested in joining your economic system. We're interested in replacing it. Zarathal's alien features showed confusion. Replacing it? But that's impossible. The quantum crystal infrastructure has existed for millennia. You can't simply dash. We already have, Elena interrupted. In the last month, 47 species have established independent trade agreements with Earth. They're purchasing our fusion technology, our digital computing systems, our kinetic defense platforms. All technologies that make their quantum crystal dependencies obsolete. The display behind Elena updated in real time, showing the cascade of political and economic changes sweeping across the galaxy. Species after species was breaking away from Council control, not because of military conquest, but because humanity offered them something better, technological independence. Furthermore, Elena continued, Earth's government has decided to formalize this new arrangement. We're establishing the Terran Federation, open to any species that wants to trade freely without dependency on quantum crystal technology. Zarathal's expression showed the dawning horror of someone watching their entire worldview collapse. You're destroying thousands of years of galactic civilization. Elena's smile was genuinely sad. No, Prime Minister, we're evolving it. The same thing we tried to explain to you 6 months ago when you decided peace wasn't profitable enough. The transmission ended, leaving Earth's command center in contemplative silence. Through the viewports, construction lights twinkled as humanity expanded their infrastructure, preparing to welcome new species into their growing federation. 5 years after the first human warship entered Council space, Ambassador Zeth Kar stood in the ruins of what had once been the galaxy's most powerful government building. The Galactic Council chambers, which had echoed with the voices of alien dignitaries for thousands of years, now served as a museum to a failed civilization. Zethkar's 4 arms trembled as he read the historical placard that explained how the mighty council had fallen not through military conquest, but through economic obsolescence. Visitors from dozens of species walked through the exhibits, many of them young beings who had never known life under council rule. Excuse me, are you Ambassador Zethkar? He turned to find a young human woman approaching, her clothing marking her as some kind of student or researcher. Behind her followed a small group of beings from various species, all apparently part of the same academic group. I am, he replied carefully, though I no longer hold that title. I'm Professor Sarah Martinez from the Terra University Institute of Galactic History. We're studying the transition period between the Council era and the Federation era. Would you be willing to answer some questions for our research? Zethkar looked around the museum, remembering when this same chamber had housed the seat of galactic power. Now it was a tourist attraction. What kind of questions? Well, you were present during the initial human contact and the subsequent conflict. From your perspective, what was the crucial moment when the Council lost control? The former ambassador considered the question seriously. He'd spent the last 5 years thinking about little else. You humans always ask the wrong question, he said finally. You assumed there was a moment when we lost control. The truth is, we never had control in the first place. Professor Martinez gestured for her students to record. What do you mean? The Council ruled through dependency, not strength. We convinced every species in the galaxy that they needed our quantum crystal technology to survive. When humanity proved that assumption false, our entire power structure collapsed overnight. One of the students, a young Zephyrian, raised a tentacled appendage. But surely the Council must have had contingency plans? Military responses for economic threats. Zethkar's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Child, you don't understand. We never faced an economic threat before. Every species we encountered either joined our system willingly for the benefits or was conquered militarily for refusing. Humanity was the first species to offer a better alternative. He walked to a display showing the final Council fleet movements, pointing to the tactical readouts. Look at these battle reports. We kept trying to fight a military war against an economic revolution. Every victory we achieved was meaningless because humanity wasn't trying to conquer our territory. They were making it irrelevant. Professor Martinez nodded. The historical records show that by the end of the conflict, most Council member species had voluntarily joined the Terran Federation. How did humanity achieve that level of political success so quickly? Because they did something no galactic power had ever done before, Zethkar replied. They made their allies stronger instead of weaker. The group looked confused, so he elaborated. The Council model required member species to remain dependent on us. We controlled the quantum crystal technology, the trade routes, the defense networks. Our members were safe and prosperous, but only as long as they remained obedient. He gestured to the museum's central display, which showed the current structure of the Terran Federation. Humanity's approach was completely different. They shared their technology freely. They taught other species how to build fusion reactors, digital computers, kinetic weapons. They actively helped their allies become technologically independent. A Valerian student spoke up. But wouldn't that reduce human influence? If every species had access to human technology, why would they need Earth? Zethkar's expression grew thoughtful. That's exactly what we couldn't understand at the time. We assumed that power came from controlling resources and keeping others dependent. Humanity proved that real power comes from making everyone stronger together. Professor Martinez checked her notes. There's one thing that still puzzles historians. The initial human diplomatic mission seemed genuinely committed to peaceful coexistence. Do you think humanity was always planning for war? The former ambassador was quiet for a long moment. I've had 5 years to think about that question. I believe humanity was genuinely seeking peace, right up until the moment they declared war. But I also believe they were preparing for conflict from the very beginning. How do you mean? Humans have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. While their diplomats negotiated with us in good faith, their engineers were developing military alternatives. Not because they wanted war, but because they understood something we didn't. Peace only works when both sides choose it. He pointed to another display showing the timeline of human military development. Look at the dates. They started Project Lazarus before we even began the blockade. They were militarizing asteroid fields while their ambassadors were still offering compromise solutions. They prepared for war while hoping for peace. And when you force them to choose, Professor Martinez asked. They were ready, Zethkar said simply. More ready than any species in galactic history. Because they had spent their entire existence preparing for conflicts they hoped would never come. The group continued through the museum, but Zethkar remained behind, staring at a final exhibit, a recording of humanity's last diplomatic transmission to the Council. The message that had ended an era and begun a new one. Captain Chen's words echoed through the empty chamber. We tried peace. Now you'll witness our retribution. But standing here 5 years later, surrounded by the evidence of humanity's success, Zethkar finally understood what that message had really meant. It wasn't a threat of destruction. It was a promise of replacement. Humanity hadn't destroyed the galactic order out of hatred or revenge. They had simply built something better. Outside the museum, the capital city of the Terran Federation hummed with activity. Ships from hundreds of species docked at orbital stations, their crews trading freely in technologies that would have been impossible under the old system. The galaxy had not been conquered. It had been liberated. And somewhere in the museum's archive, the original surrender documents signed by the Council remained on display, serving as a reminder of what happened when ancient power met innovative thinking. The age of dependency was over. The age of cooperation had begun. Zethkar walked toward the exit, past displays showing humanity's greatest achievement. Not military victory, but the creation of a galaxy where every species could reach its potential without fear, without dependency, and without the need to choose between freedom and prosperity. Earth had tried peace first. When that failed, they had given the galaxy something even better: hope.